Hi there, I'm Matt and welcome to my shop. Today I'm going to do a review of the Hammer A341 combo jointer planer that I've had in my shop for the past few months. This is at the request of my internet friend Mel. Now, I don't know about you, but I definitely have been warning my kids about making videos of themselves and sending them to strangers on the internet. And it does sound like the start of an after-school special, but in this case, I don't call him Uncle Mel when he's not a blood relation, so I think we're okay. I'll do my best to do an honest review of the machine. I think there's a tendency when people review machines that they purchase like this, when it has such a high ticket price, that they want to rationalize the purchase and they want to make it sound great. I've been using the machine for a few months now, and I'll try to give you the most honest assessment of what I like and where I find the drawbacks on the machine. So let's get to it. This is the A341, which is the biggest of the Hammer combo units. It has a 16-inch wide cutting head that's shared between the jointing and planing functions. I opted for their silent power feature, which is their spiral knife segmented cutting head. I'm not sure if it's the power of the motor or the quality of the cutting head, but it does a terrific job. There's minimal tear out, and with most woods, you barely have to pay attention to grain direction. It can also take some aggressive cuts. Max cut depth is 4 millimeters, which is a hair over 5/32. The infeed and outfeed tables are a little over 34.5 inches long. You can also add extension tables to the unit to increase the support on the in and outfeed sides of the jointer and the outfeed side of the planer. I added the large extension table and keep it on the infeed side of the table. This is the infeed side of the jointer. So here you can see the bar where the auxiliary infeed table attaches. On the bottom of it, there's this metal clamping bracket that attaches it to that bar and holds it in place. So you slide it onto the bar, and then you have the ability to slide it left and right or forwards and backwards to line up with wherever you have the fence. And then you can just easily lock it into place. So I'm not crazy about the fence and the blade guard. First of all, the fence feels a little bit lightweight. It's only really held in place by this one nut here, so there's a little bit of wobble to it. I much preferred having a big, cast iron fence that I had with my previous jointer. I get a little bit worried about this one coming out of square, so I'm always checking it for square to make sure. It doesn't come out of square that frequently, but it is something that I always double check whenever I'm going to be edge jointing something. The fence also has this crappy blade guard here. So the idea is that as you slide the fence out, this covers up the cutter head. It's made out of this really kind of flimsy sheet metal. You can see how much it flexes, and it catches on things. So as you're lifting the table up here, it'll catch on one of these hoses, and I bent this thing to hell. You can take it off and kind of hammer it flat again, but as you can see, it's a little bit beat up. I know that's a piece I'm going to have to replace at some point. Now, to be fair, they tell you when you're flipping the table up to use the planer, you're supposed to loosen here and loosen over here and then slide the fence up so that piece is covering, and then you don't have that hanging out the back as you tilt it up. But I don't know why. I don't know anybody that would actually do that if you had the space behind it. This is the Gyro blade guard. They refer to it as a bridge guard in the manuals. According to the instructions, for pieces of wood under about 3 inches in thickness, you're supposed to keep the blade guard in place. There's this set screw here that allows you to lift it up, so you can get about 3 inches plus a little bit underneath there to slide a board under. And then if the board is thicker, you can loosen this and pull this out of the way. Pretty much anything, like almost anything, I'd say 6/4 and above, and almost any board, I'll pull the blade guard out of the way. The problem for me is that it sticks here, so it's difficult to get around it. So you're pushing the piece of wood here and you're leaning over the blade guard. But that's just the way it's designed. I did prefer having the pork chop guard, but again, it was a 6-inch jointer that I had, so it was only going to stick out another 6 inches. I suppose if I had a 16-inch jointer with a pork chop guard, it's going to still pivot out and be in the same place. I think you have to get the mobility kit to go with this machine. There's an axle along the back with 2 plastic or nylon wheels, and then this bracket here at the front with a little hole in the top. It also comes with this lifting bar, which you just attach the bolt into this hole on the bracket, and you're able to lift up the machine. Now, this machine weighs 900 pounds, but with one hand, I can lift it up and move it around and reposition it. I don't know how else you would do that if you didn't have the lifting kit. Okay, so let's run the machine. First of all, I'll just turn the machine alone on, and you'll get a feel for how loud it is, and then I'll turn the machine, then I'll turn the dust collector on, and we'll run this piece of 16-quarter maple over the jointer, just so you can get a feel for how it cuts. You can see this one's pretty cut, so it may take more than one pass, and we'll set it up to take the biggest cut that it can take, which is that 4mm cut. So let's see what happens. First of all, I'll start the machine up. It's not really that loud when it's running. I can do it without the hearing protection on. It's when the dust collector comes on that things start to bother me. So you can see here that probably really loud. So you can see here that cut took a lot of material away. There's only a very little bit left. So I may take maybe half of that cut this time around and just finish cleaning that up. But you can see that's 9.5-inch wide piece of wood going across that, and it was not very difficult to push at all because of I guess a combination of the power of the motor and that segmented cutter head. So we'll finish cleaning this one up. So this is the board that we just jointed. Obviously we didn't do a finished job on it. There's still a couple patches of rougher wood out there, but I thought maybe turning off the shop lights and getting the raking light of the sun coming in might help see the quality of the finish. It's about 6:15 in the evening and the sun's setting through that window behind the board, so we're getting that light through. You can see some light tracks from the cutting heads. One actual line you can get your fingernail in, actually two of those, and a little bit of a change in the coloration here. I don't know if it's the grain changing direction or maybe the quality of how I was pushing down on the board, but I think it's a pretty nice finish, for just coming off the jointer. I don't think it's going to require a ton of sanding to make it real nice. Okay, so now let's convert the machine over. So all I've done so far is on the extension table, I folded the leg up and tightened the nut to keep the leg out of the way. I will generally leave the extension table on when I convert from the jointer to the planer. The only risk being that it's now probably head height for a 9-year-old when it's all flipped up, but I'll see it coming, my son may not. Sticking out the back here is, I'm going to leave the fence where it is. I'm going to leave this piece sticking out because I think that's more realistic around how people use it. Although the instructions do say to pull this all the way forward when you're folding it up. So with that leg up, all there is to do is to disconnect the two handles here, and then you can lift the table. It's pretty darn heavy because it's two big chunks of cast iron. And it will stay up like that. There's a little tab here that drops into place and prevents the tables from coming down and smashing your fingers or your head. And then here's this dust shroud piece here. Just flips up and over. And there's a magnetic switch down here that tells the machine that it's in jointer mode now, and that piece has been flipped over. And then the only thing left to do is to crank the table up. So the table, when it's in its lowered position, it's about 8 3/4 inches of cutting depth. So now we just need to crank it up to whatever thickness of board we're going to be working with. So the last thing to do when converting the machine is just to crank the table up. So right now we're at a little over 8 inches actually of depth. So as we move it, we'll see how long it takes to move the table up. I have a piece of mahogany that I'm going to plane. It was 5/4-ish, so I think I have about 1 3/16 left of board thickness. So we'll get somewhere up in that range and we'll push that board through. So here we go. 2 inches. We'll get it to, there's 1. We'll back off and put it about 1 1/8. So that's about how long it takes to move it up. On the negative side, that's a whole lot of cranking to do. On the positive side, it feels like you get a lot of room for adjustment and making sure that you can dial in the thickness of the board pretty well. So let's fire up the dust collector. I'll get my hearing protection on, and we'll push this mahogany through. Here's a view of the inside of the planer with the camera laying on the planer bed. Now what you see is the way the wood would travel through the planer from the bottom to the top of your screen. The first thing the wood hits are these anti-kickback pawls that would prevent the wood from shooting back out once the cutter head engages. The next thing is this ribbed roller head that grabs the wood and pushes the wood through. Then you have the segmented cutter head, we've already seen that one from the top, and then a smooth roller bar. So you can, from time to time, I will push boards through here, and this or this doesn't engage properly and isn't actually grabbing the wood, and it requires a little bit of extra pushing through. Tends to happen with smoother boards that have already been slightly planed and have that smooth surface, and maybe this ribbed planer piece here doesn't really grab onto it. Let me also show you what it looks like once you start it up so you can see how everything is moving inside. So all in all, I've been very happy with the machine. I think first and foremost, it's good value for money. That sounds insane when you're talking about a machine that's this expensive to say that it's good value for money. I know there are other places where I could have bought combo units for less, or I could have bought even individual machines for less, but for this quality of machine, there weren't that many direct comps that you could go to. So I think you were looking at the Powermatic machines, and to get a 16-inch Powermatic jointer and at least a 16-inch Powermatic planer, you're going to be spending a lot more than you spend on this machine. So for me, the only real competition was going and doing some old iron thing, right? Like a Frank Howarth, like he does with his machines. I'm not a machinist. I'm not Frank Howarth. I don't have those capabilities or those skills to rehab those machines and fix those machines. So it just wasn't really a path that I was that interested in going down. Not to mention the fact that I don't have 3-phase power or a phase converter, and so that makes it another much more difficult path to go down. I really like how the machine conserves space. I have a big shop, but I like the flexibility of having the work path of where the wood comes in and where the wood goes out, having that the same for the jointer, the wood's coming in here and going out there, and having that the same path for the planer, like a double-decker highway, so that I don't have to have 2 paths open for boards coming in and out when I'm milling. I can just run them through here. The changeover between the functions isn't a huge deal for me. It doesn't really bother me to change the machine over. I'm a hobbyist, I'm not rushing, I can take time, so if I have to go from planing back to jointing, back to planing, that's not really gonna ruin my day. I'm not really gonna be bothered by that. And as you saw with the dial, you can set it to that, that 5-digit number and get the exact planing depth, so I'm not worried about getting back to getting boards exactly the same, milled to the same thickness. I love the quality of the output that comes out of the machine. I think the finish on the boards is really smooth and ready for sanding. Not a lot of tear out, not a lot of issues with how it's coming out, and I'm really pleased with that, and it's such an upgrade from previous machines for me. I did struggle a little bit with the machine in the beginning. It arrived and sat in the garage for 9 months, and then it got moved into its new home here in the shop after the shop was built. There was a broken part on the machine. The Felder guys were great about sending me that part. It arrived very quickly, and they sent me all the instructions on how to put the machine together and calibrate the machine so that I could get it back up and running, and all these different plates were coming off, and there were Allen wrenches and bolts and all these different things, and it was super complex to get it calibrated, to get it working the right way. And it was very frustrating, and I spent many hours trying to do it. You're worrying about where the hinge connects into the body, where the hinge connects into the table, and making sure the two tables are coplanar. I gave up. I ended up having them send one of their technicians out. So as one of the Felder techs was going through New York City, that's only 45 minutes from here, he came up here and spent, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 hours working on this machine and configuring this machine and tuning it up and getting it working. So that was frustrating, but boy, I'd almost recommend that to everyone because of how well the machine works now. Now that it's been calibrated by one of their technicians, it's just works so well. And that's it. I'm happy with the machine. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have about it or dig in deeper. So feel free to, I guess, put comments in. I've never done a real YouTube video, so put comments in the bottom or hit me up on Wood Talk, and I'm happy to continue the discussion. So hope you have a great day. Thank you for spending the day with me in the shop, and I'll talk to you later.